Hi, Johnny. Thank you so much for taking time to do this today.
Thank you for having me on.
And thank you for helping me extend spooky season because I'm here for spooky season all year round, honestly, and I'm sad that it's over.
Yeah, I understand that. I totally vibe with that.
Yeah. So, being that horror is such a, I don't know, it's an interesting thing to be into because I think you either love it or hate it for most people, right? I would love to hear how you got into being a fan of horror. Were you the kid reading Goosebumps and watching Are You Afraid of the Dark and then kind of graduated into the scarier stuff, or were you more like, I'm scared of this and I kind of grew up to kind of conquer my fears?
I'm gonna, I guess, confess a little bit to my age here. I'm a little bit outside of the demographic for Goosebumps. I do remember Are You Afraid of the Dark, but I was a little older when Goosebumps kind of really rose to prominence. I'm in my mid 40s, so for me, it was more the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book
Hmm.
series that
I
I was
remember
a
that.
huge fan of, and I still am. I might have a copy of it somewhere around here. But anyway, um, I, I guess the poster behind me here kind of speaks to that.
Hmm.
Um, and so even before then, when I was very young, when I was in kindergarten, my teacher in kindergarten played a record for the class that was a scary story record. And it had on it the Tale of the Golden Arm, which is a classic kind of rising from the grave to
Hmm.
reclaim an artifact that was stolen from you ghost story. And fell in love with spooky stories from there. Grew up in Mississippi, along the Gulf Coast, surrounded by a lot of scary stories in that respect as well. So I think that embedded it in me I mean, like when I was like 5 years old. And it just became permanently fixed as my favorite go to. If I can't think of anything else to put on the television or what have you, it's always something scary.
That's awesome. So we are here to talk about your new collection of short stories that's coming out, Midnight Somewhere. I had a chance to read them. I have some favorites. I thought the whole book was phenomenal, but I definitely had some that stuck out and a few that just made me kind of laugh out loud. I don't know what that says about me in the dark humor, but I thought they were great. Some were scary, some were more like thought-provoking, and then yeah, some of them like I said, I laughed. And again, don't know what that says about me, but I would love to hear from you what you think readers should expect from this book.
I mean, hopefully similar to your experience, something well rounded. There are some stories here that are more cutthroat, direct horror. There are some that are designed to be a little bit more thought provoking, emotional, even. And then there are stories that I deliberately tried to bring out my humorous side, which through my first two novels, I haven't really gotten to explore very much. So I like to think that I can crack a joke or two at least from time to time, and I was able to at least write a couple of stories that are just explicitly designed to be funny. And then there's at least one story that I can think of off top. There might be another one, but at least one story that originally started off as a I was going to write it comedically. That was my intention, and then it turned into arguably like my most heartbreaking story in the book. So just kind of never know what direction things are going to go in. So I'm hopeful that people will receive it the way you did and embrace the variety that comes within the story.
Yes, I'll have to say that, and I don't want to spoil anything, but the No Hungry Generations, I don't think was supposed to be funny, but to me, I enjoy nature and hiking and stuff, and so Mother Nature getting some, what happens, and I laughed. I was like, that's great.
Well, that's the one. It's interesting. That's the one that definitely started out like purely comedic. It was going to be just like a send up of this family. And then as I was
Mhm.
writing it, kind of liked the family more. So those comedic points are still definitely present, especially front loaded in the story. And even just kind of the concept of it is pretty humorous. And
Yeah.
what happens at the Thanksgiving dinner, all those kind of things. But then when it was completed and then I submitted it to a couple of different places where it's been published, it was taken very, like, much more somberly. So much so that I was like, did I remove too much of the humor? So I'm happy that somebody laughed at it because it started off, at least, that's the one I was talking about. It started off when I first envisioned it and started writing it, it was entirely comedic.
Well, I laughed and I shared it with a good friend of mine who also enjoys nature and hiking and stuff, and he also laughed. So we thought it was funny.
Awesome.
Is there a story or two from this novel you would love to see turned into a film? Like maybe a dark
Huh.
comedy or one of the more horror ones, or, I have some picks, but I want to hear yours first.
Um, I mean, I would love to. I would love to make a. I'm really into like mockumentary kind of style horror, amongst many other types that I love. But um, the the roller coaster come to life story.
That's the one.
Um,
I love that one.
yeah, I got to write it in a style that I've been wanting to write something kind of this, not experimental, that's not the right word for it, but it's written in the style of like an article, and it's titled The Merge Monster Incident 1 year later. So we're kind of dropped into the aftermath of this incident.
Mhm,
And I would love for that to be basically a fake documentary in the style of the text, where we're interviewing people, some footage from the event,
mhm.
some maybe newly surfaced footage of where the mysterious roller coaster has like allegedly appeared. That one I've kind of storyboarded in my brain and pictured, scenes that aren't even present in it, but in the story, in the story as it's written, but that I think would work hopefully very well on a big screen. So that one for sure. I think the second to last story in the book is the Happy People.
Mhm,
I actually wrote a full script for the Happy People. Um, the version of it that's in the book itself is more a an epilogue to that script.
mhm.
The script is everything that precedes that, and I would love to see that adapted. I have a lot of faith in that as a slasher style story. So there's a few in there that I would love to see brought to a big screen one day, or a small screen. Who knows? One day.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about Merge Monster in a second, but yeah, every time you look away, I felt would make good
Mm,
for almost like a short film, and it kind because it kind of was in the vein of like the Oscar Wilde Portrait of Dorian Gray to me,
yeah.
like very. That was definitely more of a thought-provoking one than super scary. But yeah, Merge Monster was, I was like, man, this is like if Phineas and Ferb went wrong, like really, really wrong. And I love it. And then as I was reading it, I play video games too, so I was thinking of like the Left 4 Dead 2 map where you're in the Dark Carnival, and
uh,
I was like, ah, this would be so cool on this big screen. So when you said that, I was like, yes, let's go record that. But yeah, mockumentary style, I think that would be great with some like humor in there, maybe like yeah, like scary movie kind of
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even that
craziness.
story, it there's an inherently kind of humorous component. I mean, like a roller coaster rips itself
Right.
out of the concrete and roams the hills of Appalachia. I feel like that's inherently got like a little bit of a kind of a comical setup, and so the challenge for me that I was happy to embrace was kind of the horror is also being mined from the idea that if that was something that happened to your family member, and the world is kind of memifying it, and it's like you're over here like this is serious. Like my children were on this roller coaster that absconded with them, and God knows where they are. And they've been
Hmm.
missing for a year, and everybody else is like either saying it's a hoax or like all these other things, or they're making a joke out of it. It's like that would just be like kind of even worse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's I understand why everybody's making a joke out of it, because you say that out loud and it sounds absurd.
Hmm. Exactly. Where do you draw your inspiration from for these stories? Because like I said, they are so varied in tone and direction. Like, where are you pulling from?
I mean, all over the place. I get story ideas. I try to ask a lot of questions, um, of just like if I see something random once upon a time, and I haven't been able to place this story or sell it, but I saw like a baby's shoe in the road, just one discarded baby shoe. And I was like, I wonder what's the deal with that. And I was like, oh, you're going to find out. You're going to write a story about it and
Yeah.
figure that out. So a lot of my inspiration, I mean, I read a lot of authors. I love Robert Bloch, who's a great short storyteller. Richard Matheson, obviously, who I think did brilliant work, and probably most famously for I guess the mass appeal of it was the Twilight Zone episodes that he wrote several Twilight Zone episodes. Um, he also wrote Duel, the movie, kind of the sort of soft breakthrough for Spielberg back in his early career. So I love those authors, and I love what they do with strange, weird stories and trying to um mine a plot out of just a bizarre what if situation. And I keep a running list of story ideas in a spreadsheet. And so anytime something pops in there, I put it in. I think almost every story on this list was, or on the in the table of contents for this book, was on that list at some point. And sometimes, I just catalog it and I think I'll come back to it. Sometimes I don't, and sometimes I'll come up with an idea and I'm like, I just need to get in front of a computer and write this immediately. Or if I don't have a computer near me, just I have notebooks stashed around in various places, either in my house or even one in my car. And sometimes I'll just be like, okay, I just need to at least write a quick 100 words of this so I can carry that momentum when I transcribe it later.
Yeah, that's smart to keep the notebooks everywhere. I have them everywhere too, but it's for different reasons. More just because I'm like, I forgot to write something down. But I was actually going to ask like some of your authors that you like. So thank you for
Hmm,
sharing that. You just jumped ahead of me. That's
sure.
fine. Had some great spooky movies this season. Obviously, I'm an avid reader, but I'm also a moviegoer. So we had some good horror this year. We've had some not so good horror this year. But what has been stuck out to you this year? Like movies, stories, what have you? What have you been your top picks?
Oh man, I mean, it's going to be very like chalk heavy. I'm trying to think of something off the wall, but obviously Sinners,
Yeah.
obviously Weapons. Just both of those. I'm super proud of the horror genre this year. The two, I've been saying this ad nauseum. People are probably sick of hearing me say it in various places, but the two highest grossing original movies of the year were horror
Hmm.
movies, were Sinners and Weapons. No IP, no sequel, no branding, nothing. Just original scripts hit the screen. These were the two big sensations of the year. This is the talk of, to me, the idea of like we need originality in movies.
Hmm.
Horror is providing that. So those two, I just saw Shelby Oaks, the Chris Stuckman
Hmm.
film, the YouTuber who, um, over the years, finally has gotten his dream project film up on the screen. I think for a first outing, there's some unevenness to it, but overall, it was something to be proud of. It wasn't something that he needs to. He'll definitely grow from it and build from it. And there were definitely at least a couple of moments, especially in the center of the film. There was a moment where um, the lead character kind of visits an abandoned prison
Yeah.
slash I think it was supposed to be
The
kind of an
asylum
asylum, but
place.
mostly
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And that whole sequence I thought was like really extremely well done and using darkness and other elements to it. And so um really I came away overall impressed by that. Um Gosh, I think those are like probably, like for different reasons, my standouts of the year. Like I said, it's not anything too off the wall. I know that there's a movie on Tubi right now called Match that is kind of for anybody who's into more gross out horror, is providing that for people. You have a range there. I always like the VHS series when it comes out. And I think VHS Halloween did a really good
Oh,
job
yeah,
this
I remember.
year.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that was. I mean, I was my my favorite of the VHS series so far has been VHS Beyond, which I thought had some of the scariest concepts. One story in particular, which it's hard for me to find something that I really find hard to watch. Like ultimately, even if I'm watching like the Terrifier movies, I'm kind of like, there's a point where like gore transcends, and I'm kind of like, okay, well we've circled back into funny, like kind of like your response to certain things. It's like this
Yeah.
is like just kind of gone so far beyond or like ordinary gruesome, and now it's
Hmm.
just comical, kind of by design. But I remember VHS Beyond having something that really disturbed me. So I'm always looking forward to the VHS series. This year, I thought they did a solid job with it as well. So that's just a handful of the picks I can think of off the top of my head that I really love. But horror's had, I think, a hell of a year. I think a really, really great year.
Yeah, it has. And honestly, it's one of the few genres I review movies too. So like it's one of the few
Hmm.
genres that still have some originality left in it.
Oh, yeah.
And can make smaller budgeted films and have such a huge impact on, you know, the whole
Yeah, absolutely.
conversation. And like I said, I think you have some stories that would be ripe for that sweet spot of the horror genre.
Thank
But
you.
is all my questions for you. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope everyone picks up a copy of Midnight Somewhere because yeah, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna think about it, you're gonna get scared a little bit, and you'll probably laugh some more. Especially because, credit scores are scarier than any supernatural being out there. Because yeah.
Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the sad, sad truth?